Houston Cougars, a furious comeback to knock off Duke and advance to the national championship game.
Here is Zion Chris, big hole, open sesame. Zion Chris, wow, the 72-yard house call.
Stick it in your pipe and smoke it, baby. Yes!
Welcome to Scott Holm Podcast, back tonight here, late January. Another one of those weeks. I know very recently, Bobby, I opened an episode saying how we've almost become, with this new normal where Cougar athletics, especially the Cougar football and men's basketball programs are, we've become spoiled with this new normal. Like we're going to talk tonight. Like I tried to think of a way to start this that didn't say, well, it's kind of a humdrum week. Like, yeah, the humdrum week this week consisted of beating a Big 12 opponent that still would have been on the pretty high end of what we saw in the American Conference previously, beating them by 30 while hanging 100 on them. And oh, by the way, this week's game is going to be the College Gameday centerpiece that, if our rival is being truthful, they're mostly getting because we're going to be there. Like, they're a very good team themselves. And I'm going to, after this, and this made me throw up a little bit, Bobby, I'm going to say mostly nice things about Texas Tech men's basketball because they are quite a good team. They'll be quite difficult to beat on the road. But it's just one of those weeks that 11 or 12 years ago, when we were still very much Cougar fans as we are now, would have seemed like a fever dream. Multiple really exciting transfers on the football side, including a guy who was at least a role player for a team that was playing very deep into the college football postseason. That's going to be part of your team next year. That's really exciting. A couple of sports restarting in 2026 that we're going to talk about today, with actual on court, and I guess in one case on pool results to talk about. We're going to fit them in there as well. Bobby, I know a winter storm is bearing down you here in a few days, and I'm not saying that to make light of it. Just I like to kind of give these episodes a stamped in time thing that's happening. We were talking about that before air. So you prepping? Have you cleared all the shelves of various tinned foods yet? Or are you ready for the potential ice apocalypse coming your way in a few days?
Yeah, man, really more worried about the toilet paper situation. That's always a concern because no one could ever figure that out. But that we're taking it back to 2020 there, when people would just load up on toilet paper, and you're like, the reason why it's not on the shelves is because you're buying 100 rolls. But no, in all seriousness, I did go do a little bit of grocery shopping today, that kind of stuff. It happens once a year here in DFW, where you just kind of say, well, everyone just go home for 2-3 days, maybe a day, maybe two, and just go chill. Everyone sit at home, enjoy watching Texas Tech versus University of Houston men's basketball on Saturday, and just try to relax as much as you can.
No doubt. And I'm obviously wishing you and the very non-zero number of Cougs in the DFW Metroplex that I know listen to this podcast a safe weekend, and that this is as little of a pain in the butt as possible to deal with for those of y'all in the Ice Storm's path, and obviously anyone in any part of Texas experiencing that. I'm going to mention, of course, at the top here, patreon.com/SH podcast. That's the place to support the work that Bobby and I do here, talking about the Houston Cougars on a weekly basis. Any amount of money is incredibly helpful to defray the time and actual monetary costs of doing this here show. If you don't do so already, and that sounds good to you, that is patreon.com, patreon.com/SH podcast. We would open tonight, as you'd probably expect, with Houston Cougar men's basketball, who most recently dominated Arizona State about as bad as anyone has dominated any opponent in the current Big 12 men's basketball season. I think I did a non-cursory dive into those games. BYU Arizona State would be another one of those candidates. They beat them by 28 in Provo, but I will note that game was at least moderately close in the first 10 minutes, which this one was most certainly not. ASU was also fresh off giving the current number one Arizona at least somewhat of a scare in Tucson last week. And in this one, Bobby, they were down 24-2 and 30-5 at different points earlier in the first half. You don't have to overstate what ASU is in 2026. Probably one of the three worst Big 12 men's basketball programs, maybe the worst Big 12 men's basketball program that comes to the Fertitta Center this season, you don't have to overstate what this opponent was to still kind of be in awe of what the Cougs did to them on Sunday night at the Fertitta Center. Bobby, what were your big takeaways from this one?
Yeah, it was kind of a weird game to your point, or we absolutely went out dominated. You jump out to that massive lead. You kind of took your foot off the gas, and they cut it to, what was it, 16, Sam, off the top of my head?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 16, 17, somewhere in there. I don't think they got it down to 13, but I think it was 16. Um, and you kind of you pulled your starters, you took your foot off the gas there. They get back in, they get back in the game. Sampson calls a timeout. You see some of the starters kind of pop back onto the game, and you end up winning by 30. I think one of the biggest things, it's I don't want to say it's hard to have many takeaways in a game in which you're this dominant, right? They're still a top 100 Ken Palm team. They're not going to make the tournament or anything like that. But this isn't like you did this against one of the bye games, right? Like you didn't do this against Ryder or Oakland, or
Hey,
Middle
respect on
Tennessee.
Oakland. Oakland
Yes,
might be like
sorry.
Oakland might be like the fourth or fifth best team we had in non-conference,
You're
honestly.
you're not wrong. This wasn't Middle Tennessee. How about that? Is that a little bit better there?
When Jackson State, sorry Jackson State for catching strays,
Yeah,
but you're catching strays here.
it's not one of those games, right? You still play the top 100 Ken Palm team, and you still beat them by 30. But I did want to try and find some things to kind of look out for, or things that you just kind of build on. I love the fact that we were 92% from the line. This team has been a better free throw shooting team this year than I probably think. They're the Cougs are top 50 in free throw percentage, according to Ken Palm. So really good stuff there. You turned them over 7 more times than they turned you over. Not a huge surprise, but always good to see. You outscored them by 17 points off those turnovers. In a 30-point game, that's pretty big there. It also shows that you're able to, if you do turn the ball over, you can still get the stops and recover off that. I liked how we looked in transition coming off those turnovers as well. That shows with the 17-point advantage off of turnovers. Absolutely impressed with JoJo. This is another game where maybe you don't, if you look at the box score, you go, yeah, he had a pretty solid game, but you just see him moving a little bit better. I think the wisdom teeth, and I think the off-season surgery and things like that, and the injury he was dealing with, I think he's finally getting into game shape. Those little bunny hops coming up short, you didn't really see that happen much in this game. You were seeing that a lot early in the season, where he was really stronger, he was really soft. He just didn't have that touch. Looks like he's getting that touch. So 12 points in 24 minutes, 7 rebounds, 3 turnovers. I'm cool with that. Sinak's been really good offensively the past few games as well. And that's been a big thing. 8 of 15 from the field. His offensive game has taken that next step, I think, coming into the season. And I think I said this last week, coming into the season, that was something that was kind of hyped about him. Just hasn't looked very comfortable shooting the ball this year. Looks like he's finally getting the confidence to just kind of let go. 8 of 15, like I said, from the field. Him putting up 15 shots just in general feels like that's a big improvement from the confidence that he's had earlier in the season. His offensive game, like I said, has really taken that massive step, and you can really see opponents are starting to have to respect it a little bit. You're seeing the big men kind of come out a little bit more on him, or they're leaving him open, saying like, go ahead, take it, we dare you to, and he's knocking it down. At some point, they're going to have to come put a hand in his face, and that's going to open things up for your guards. You can really see this offense really starting to take those steps, and it's hard to ignore the defense of this team, but that's what you come to expect from this team. There's no surprises defensively with this team. You expect them to just shut teams down. And really, I think the only reason why Arizona State gets to 73 is there were so many possessions in this game, because you were scoring a lot. There wasn't a lot of time that was taken deep into the shot clock.
And no small feat that this team, like you said, and like I agree with, is as good as it is defensively. And you've had 2 freshmen playing significant starters minutes, a third freshman who's been one of your first guys off the bench, who I think his role is only growing to this point. Isaiah Harwell, I think, contributed a lot in this one. That you were probably a little worse defensively than last year, which is only to say you were a slightly lower brand of elite than last year's elite defense. No
Yeah.
knock on this year's team. Like, you are by any objective metric one of the very best defensive teams in the country. But to do that with Kingston and Senac playing as many minutes as they are does speak to the coaching acumen of Kelvin Sampson and his staff, but also speaks to those kids being the right kind of recruits for this program, the right kind of culture fits, which anyone who's watched the season to this point would say, yeah, like the on-court basketball reflects that, but still worth reminding ourselves how incredible it is that those guys are out of the box as ready for Houston Cougar men's basketball as they are, because a lot of these guys who came through the program recently, like Jamal Shed, Kelvin Sampson, was dying anytime he was in front of a microphone Jamal Shed's senior season to talk about how unplayably bad he was as a freshman. Like, some very good players in this program have been multi-year kind of guys, needed years to figure it out and like really hone their craft and find their role. That these guys have been playing less than 3 months on court and have done what they've done is simply incredible. The game specific thing I keep coming back to from this win over Arizona State is the balance. Not that you didn't have standout performances among this very balanced effort. Kingston Flemings is probably your game MVP, but make no mistake, this was also a large group of Cougars turning in some of their best performances of the season. Your lowest scoring starter was JoJo with 12 points and making 2/3 of his shots and doing all the things you said he did. Like, a notable good performance from JoJo, and he was your lowest scorer. And ASU, not a good interior defensive team or anything close to it. The season numbers will tell you a pretty consistent story there. Opponents have shot the ball well, both from distance and inside the arc against ASU. But that was a team that had a lot of size, and their freshman big man, Masamba Jop, came into this one having a great start to Big 12 play, including 16 on 7 of 9 from the field against a very big, very skilled Arizona team last week. And then he probably had the worst game of his young college career against the Cougs on Sunday. It wasn't just the defense from your big men. Mentioned it a moment ago. You talked about it. JoJo had that super efficient 12 points to go along with 7 boards and 2 blocks. Senac had a career high 18 points. Also had 5 assists, 3 steals, and a block, which I feel like is just as important. Like, you're seeing not just how he impacts the game as a shooter, but how he contributes defensively. He's a above average skilled passer as a big man. We've needed a reminder, because Kingston Flemings is kind of a curve killer for young guys having great seasons, that Chris Senac is also a really special freshman. I mean, Sampson has joked recently about the number of sleepless nights he's had because he's had these 2 freshmen playing such big roles, but it's really been gratifying to see these 3 freshmen, including Isaiah Harwell, figure out how to write their own stories in this awesome era of Cougar basketball. Fun stat for you, Bobby. Sunday was also the 3rd time since the start of Big 12 play that Milos Uzan has shot better than 50% on his 3-pointers. Also tied his season high with 3 steals against the Sun Devils. I think the season numbers are going to perpetually be a bit skewed by his really poor shooting start, but we're seeing now the Milos Uzan we expected to see coming into the season. And it's happened often enough that I feel like I'm now not running the risk of overreacting to a good game or two. It's not going to be what he does every night, because no player shoots 50% or better from 3 in a conference as good as the Big 12, but
what if he could, Sam?
Hey, would be very happy to be wrong about that if he does turn into an almost every game thing. Don't think it's going to happen. Don't think it's a fair expectation for Milos to do that. I know that's not what you're saying. As much as ASU did anything well, it's what you talked about. They forced that run of turnovers that also kind of coincided with you having a cold shooting spell in the, late middle of the second half. At this point, U of H was already leading into the 30s, so I think you could call this garbage time as well. I mean, ASU did relatively well turning the Cougars over, something that, I think he dropped from like 5th to 8th in the country in turnover percentage after this one. But also, this was their worst turnover performance of the season offensively. And despite doing, I think, pretty good job turning the Cougs over, still insanely underwater on points off turnovers, still insanely underwater. I think -7 or -8 on total turnovers. Not going to say the Cougs played especially well during this small second half stretch, but we also knew coming in, one of the few things ASU did well defensively was force turnovers. And they did turn the Cougs over more than most opponents probably will this season. Also helped them. They were able to get to the free throw line, something we also knew that they were pretty good at. They had a lot of pressing off dead ball situations, off made free throws during that little run they had there. And I vaguely remember when we played in Tempe last year, they did one of those. They pressed a bunch late to turn, I think it was like a 20-something point margin to like a 12-point margin. I guess they weren't hitting shots or getting to the line frequently enough early to do this, but I think if I was an ASU fan, seeing them temporarily look like they knew what they were doing would only piss me off more. We'd only be like, oh, you're capable of actually giving this team that's turning the ball over some problems, and you didn't start doing it until you were down 30 points. Like, cool, thanks, great. Some real James Dickey era basketball stuff, with James Dickey also being a much better human and representative of the program than Bobby Hurley was of ASU. But I will say, Bobby Hurley, not someone I'm especially fond of. He had a great quote to the gathered media at the Fertitta Center after the game on Sunday when he was asked about facing U of H, BYU, and Arizona in the first few weeks of Big 12 play. And Bobby, if you don't mind, I'll put that quote snippet in here for the listeners, because I think it's really good.
I talked to the guys just watching Houston on film, getting ready for the game, that I think Arizona tries to overwhelm you with their size around the basket, and their guards could attack the basket and they get points in the paint. Houston just tries to beat you into submission and make you want to quit or be somewhere else. Like, so that's just like the intensity that they play with is different than probably anything that I've played against this year.
Didn't he get a tech as well in this game, if I recall?
He did after a point where they actually had hit a shot. They were down like 17 or something like that. So it's not like ASU was back in it, but it was at what could only be an inopportune time for that point, was that he was yelling about a call that, like, I saw a bunch of people online say, like, yeah, he was dead wrong about this. Like, it was
which that's one of the things that, like, you see our record and you do that kind of stuff and you realize Sampson's a great coach and all that, but one of the things is, like, we don't have stupid fouls like that. Like, it always feels like a lot of times our fouls, we get our money's worth on, if that makes sense. So you don't see Sampson just taking dumb calls like that, and the team is very disciplined more than that. The fouls are gameplay fouls, not jawing, not taunting or anything like that, which is something you can definitely appreciate. Like you said, that was 17 points, but maybe you don't take it there. Maybe you get a little bit of momentum behind you. I don't know. Like, I'm not saying it changes the game or anything like that,
spot,
but you can't do that there. You can't do that there.
And it's awesome to hear a coach talking about how U of H essentially beats teams into submission and makes opponents wish they were anywhere else, which you don't have to be a basketball or body language expert to watch this game and say the Cougs emphatically did that to the Sun Devils on Sunday night.
Yeah, you could tell that was just a team that just got beat. Like, sometimes, I sent it to a friend of mine, a family friend of mine, after the Baylor game. It's just an old-fashioned ass whooping right there. And that's all that was.
Anything from this one that we talked about that you would like to talk about, Bobby?
No, I'm good.
We'll quickly mention, before we get to previewing the Tech game this coming weekend, I wanted to mention the retirement of Dwight Davis's number 42 jersey from Sunday night's game.
Good call.
And because Davis's time at U of H predates the two of us being alive, I want to give everyone, including ourselves, a little bit history lesson on one of the all-time great Cougar hoopers who has number retired. Davis was originally from Houston. He played his prep ball at Worthing on the southeast side before playing 4 years at U of H under Guy V. Lewis from 1969 to 72. Was a star on Cougar teams in the 1970 and 71 Sweet 16s, or teams that advanced to the 70 and 71 Sweet 16s, and in his senior season averaged over 24 points per game for a third NCAA tournament team in as many years playing varsity intercollegiate basketball. This was at the end of the year where freshmen did not play intercollegiate basketball. In all three of those seasons, Bobby, Davis averaged double-digit points and rebounds. He was, I think, like a tenth of a point his sophomore season off of averaging at least 20 and 10 all three seasons, which is some really, really crazy stuff.
That feels good, Sam. That feels like that's a good thing to do. Like, not a basketball expert, but I think that's pretty good, man.
Yeah, averaging 20 and 10, pretty great. After his 4 seasons at U of H, he was drafted with the third overall pick by the Cleveland Cavaliers in the 72 draft. Played 5 seasons combined with the Cavs and Golden State Warriors before retiring due to a career-ending injury he suffered in February of 1977. Since his playing career ended, he's most recently lived in New Hampshire and served on various state boards there, as well as being a board member for the NBA Retired Players Association. So like I said, I realized when I was reading about Dwight Davis being honored that I should probably know more about the career of this Cougar athlete. And I'm glad I got to see his number, or that we got to see him have his number retired, that he was around to see his number retired at this team's nice new arena. That I think, a tribute to the great teams of recent past, but also the great teams of his era, of Olajuwon Drexler's era, before even Davis, when it was Elvin Hayes. Just a great basketball program. I know, and I think our fandom actually started during that gulf between the great era of times bygone and the great era of present, but we shouldn't forget about the bygone era as well, because this is a really cool program. Obviously really cool in the recent seasons, but a lot of great history as well.
Agreed, 100%. There's a lot of history that I think a lot of our younger fans don't know, and I would encourage them to read about this program and learn as much as they can about this program, and just have a appreciation for what this program was and is at the same time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know I'm a biased Cougar fan, but I don't believe there are 10 more interesting and notable combination of the two programs out there in college basketball than this one. Especially given that you've spent the last almost decade now, like, being decent. I don't know if that's as true in 2013 or 2014, but I think it's definitely the case now. Back to the present, though, we have what feels like the first week in a bit where there's not a weeknight where you and I are watching a Cougar men's basketball game. The team will next be in action on Saturday at 5:30 p.m. in Lubbock, playing the return game against the Texas Tech Red Raiders. This will only be the second time Cougar men's basketball has played at United Supermarkets Arena. The first one was a Cougar win last season to avenge last year's earlier home loss. Stating the brutally obvious here, Bobby, Tech will be an extremely difficult opponent in their arena. Possibly the most difficult test the Cougs will get on the road in Big 12 play this season, though BYU and Kansas, I think there are good arguments for them as well. Iowa State probably should have included BYU with Iowa State and Kansas as well. And like at the top, I really don't enjoy praising this specific opponent, but them beating BYU last Saturday is one of the louder conference results of the season. Not just that they beat them at all, though I think it would have been a good win regardless. They scored 32 points in the final 10 minutes and turned a close game that they'd spent a decent amount of time trailing into a pretty decisive win. That's what makes Tech so scary. They're an objectively great offensive team who is now seeming to really put some good defensive performances on tape. We can't argue that U of H didn't struggle to score for big chunks of the Tech game in Houston. And you saw on Saturday, they did a great job shutting down AJ DeBonsa and BYU's really, really potent offense. And if they're able to do that, if they're able to also, along with being a very, very good borderline elite offensive team, be a very, very good defensive team, that's challenging. Bobby, I'm hoping you can get me off this streak of Tech positivity. What do you have to add about Saturday's showdown in Lubbock?
So the name that I'm kind of looking out for here is Petty, their guard Petty, who went off for 20 against us in the first matchup. And you kind of look at his results after that game, and he's kind of cooled off a little bit. Not that he was particularly hot heading into our matchup. I do wonder if that last matchup, if the first matchup was more of a, we won't let JT Toppin kill us, so someone else is going to have to beat us. And Petty got pretty close to doing that with his 20 points. So I do wonder if this matchup, that's kind of what I'm going to be looking out for, is will it be another case of JT Toppin will not beat us and we'll let Petty get 20, 25 if he needs to, as long as you also don't let Toppin get 18 like he got last time. Like, if you can hold Toppin to 12 here and you let Petty get his 20, I think you're feeling pretty good. But holding JT Toppin to 20, or holding JT Toppin to something like 12 is a lot easier said than done. But I mean, he got 18 last time, and it looked like we were trying our best to make sure he didn't score. He still got 18. I think in the last matchup I said after that game, he had 18, but it didn't feel like he had 18. He didn't really take over at any point, and it just never really felt like JT Toppin was the guy we had to guard, and he was taking over a game. So hopefully you kind of get that feeling, and maybe you don't let Petty get 20. Maybe you let him get 16 this time, and you can breathe a little bit easier. But I don't expect this game to be easy. This is a classic example of you get a 1-point win and you are happy to get out of there. Ken Palm has this as a 1-point win for the Cougs, and really that's at 52%. Not a lot of confidence there. This game really could go either way.
Yeah, have you seen that? I think it's a Drake music video where the two guys are like looking around a computer and they're like, oh, like they had the Eureka moment.
Yes.
All these Big 12 coaches hear you say, yeah, just hold JT Toppin at 12, and they're having the same expression. It's like, oh, why did we think of that? Why did we think of that? I mean, I do think, to what you said though, I do think the Cougs did a good job in that one, denying him periodically. Like, he had a good game. Like, anyone would look at that and say, like, watch it, look at the stats. Like, he had a good game, but what you say is exactly what happened. You didn't allow him to take over. Like, there were times where you just simply denied him the ball, which don't know if the box score tells you that entirely, but though you did at least a decent job. I would say, but this is not me being super confident. It's going to sound like at the outset, but I'm going to finish my thought here. I would be surprised if Jalen Petty has another shooting performance in Lubbock like he did at Fertitta the last two times these teams met. But I don't know if you'll be as easy, or I don't know if you'll be able to contain Christian Anderson and Lawan Watts the way the Cougs did earlier this month when these two teams met. Again, this has been a team that has been very good on the whole defensively, the Cougs, but opponents have shot better from deep than inside against the Cougs, and Tech's biggest strengths are essentially great outside shooting and JT Toppin. Like, that's, I think if I trust any team out there to try and solve that defensively, it's this Cougar team, but it's not an easy thing to solve, especially in Lubbock. Fully co-sign what you said. This isn't any margin is an acceptable margin kind of win if the Cougs can pull it off. But I'm excited to see it. Like, I'm excited to see this team play a big game like this one. This is why you move to the Big 12. Like, not that we never ever, like, we had College Gameday come to Fertitta as an American Conference member, but the lights certainly weren't as bright on you in that league as they are now in the Big 12. It's to play a game that might be the headliner of the day in a conference that's one of the best in the country. Like, that's why you did this move, and win or lose, they'll hopefully win. I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah, like you said, these are the matchups that get you excited to play in the Big 12. This is why you get excited for this. It's the same as it is with football, right? Tech fans. There are Tech fans that live next to you. There are Tech fans that you see and interact with on a day-to-day basis, on a week-to-week basis. For most of us, Sam, sorry, bud. Oh wait, you have a Tech fan.
I do, and unfortunately, he is the nicest guy. Follows sports enough that we could talk it, but not so. He's not even ever playfully been like, "Oh, you went to Cougar High, huh?" No, like if I went to Randy, it's like, "Hey, fuck you, Randy," I would feel bad for like a month afterwards. So yes, I do, but unfortunately, he has the flaw of being a nice guy. Sorry.
But you still have that, right? There's still a little bit of juice behind it, right?
Oh yeah.
One of my really good friends, one of her coworkers that she loves to talk to all the time, she's got her U of H lanyard. Her friend's got her Texas Tech lanyard, and neither one of them watch sports, but they know who won the game, and they're gonna make sure they watch football, they watch like they're not watching it like we are, or even that, but they'll catch the score and they know their friend does. This is why you want to be in the Big 12. I didn't know any East Carolina fans. I didn't know any, Tulsa fans. This is why you want to do it.
No doubt. We'll note quickly, there are no other Cougar men's basketball games in our window of time before we sit down and do another podcast next week. The next game will be actually in your neck of the woods, Bobby, with the Cougars playing at TCU for the first time in 2+ years next Wednesday, which we will talk about next week. We will talk now about Cougar football, as this week, it's worth noting this, I'll probably say this again during this segment, does not mark the end of players being able to pick new programs, but save for everyone who's, teams made a deep CFP run or were in last night's national championship game, the window for players to enter is now closed. So we can at least now, as we sit and look at the 2026 Cougar football roster, assume that U of H's outgoings are mostly set in stone and that the incoming player group will also largely be what the group looks like come spring practice, come summer workouts. So you might have some guys commit in the interim and then enroll for the summer, but probably the class that we see right now is largely what the transfer class is going to be. And we've had a couple ads, one really exciting one that I think could be an exciting one for the future too, since we last recorded, who we're going to talk about here as well. If you allow me, Bobby, take a quick detour and just look at the big picture of this class a sec. If you,
Yeah.
You knew the priorities after the Texas Bowl went final going into the offseason. Obviously, number one, retain your key projected returners, especially the quarterback receiver tandem of Connor Wigman and Amari Thomas, big check marks in both columns there. And you knew which areas of the team needed portal help. O-line, you were graduating multiple guys who played key roles. And we'll just say the staff wasn't wild about who they had at center either. D-line also, because you graduated Carlos Allen and Eddie Walls, linebacker, where Jalen Garner graduated and Corey Platt Jr. entered the portal. Basically the defensive front collectively there. Also receiver and tight end. In the former's case, you needed some more competition for the reps behind Amari Thomas, and tight end, obviously you're placing the best, highest usage tight end the Cougars have had in many, many years at the position in Tanner Koziol. Running back didn't feel like an enormous need compared to the other ones, but you lost Dean Connors to graduation, and I believe this portal class made that group incredibly intriguing with Mekhi Hughes reuniting with Slade Nagel and Willie Fritz and complementing a couple exciting returning youngsters that you have in DJ Butler and Rashawn Sanford. You clearly spent money to retain, because as much as guys like Amari Thomas and Connor Wigman do understand, I'm sure, the value they get from playing for this U of H program under Willie Fritz, where they both had great 2025 seasons, acknowledging that if U of H hadn't compensated them adequately, they wouldn't be returning, and this incoming class wouldn't look nearly as strong as it does right now if U of H weren't spending the necessary NIL money. I do believe generally what I've heard about U of H getting more money to spend on portal signees, but it's not just about the money, man. Players also saw how many of the guys who came into this team from the last portal class developed and were part of a good football team. In Carlos Allen's case, from 2 portal classes ago, and obviously had 2 strong seasons in this program, coming off of never playing FBS football before joining this program. And I'm not going to say with the last portal class there weren't transfers we were excited about. I was really excited about Amari Thomas coming in after being a super high usage guy his first 2 college seasons at UAB. Dean Connors from Rice, I think we both knew would be a pretty big part of this offense. Obviously Connor Wigman, even with plenty of question marks from his time at A&M, we knew represented a major upgrade at quarterback, even if he didn't live up to all the hype. But it's not unfair to say that that wasn't a super heralded class, Bobby, outside of those of us in the Cougar community. Maybe a few of the people who cover college football on a more Texas-centric basis might have been seeing what Willie was cooking there, but not a huge, highly rated class. And not underselling the money aspect, if you don't have that, it makes your life a lot more difficult. But also, if you don't have a coaching staff who've proven they can develop guys, the money's basically for naught, yeah? Like, U of H has that now, and now has the coaching staff, and I think we should all be immensely excited about that.
Yeah, to your point, you had some things you really wanted to get handled, and you did it. Like, you didn't have a ton of... The other thing that I found very interesting is you didn't lose very many key contributors. It's not to say that, like, would I rather have Demetrius Pancake here? Sure, but I don't feel like it's the end of the world losing him, just because it would be nice to have somebody like who had played on this line and did all that. But I'm not,
I mean, are you trading for Boswell from Toledo right now?
No, exactly. So it's like, and not to. I hear how excited some of the Colorado people are, and it's like, okay, like I'm happy for you, but I guess
maybe he develops. Not betting on it,
but at the end of the day, you had things that you needed to fill, and you didn't seem like you had much of a problem filling it in. You know what I mean? Like, even last year, it kind of felt like you had some portal needs. You had a lot of portal needs, and it felt like you were like, yeah, I think I can kind of see how that's gonna work. Like this year, it's very much like, no, the needs are filled, and I'm pretty happy with what we brought in. You know?
Yeah, it helps also the outgoings. Like, it wasn't a super high volume, and
Yep.
again, Corey Platt and Demetrius Hunter will both be playing power conference football this coming season. That says something about where they are as players, but also neither guy is just like oh my God, we like losing Wigman or Thomas would have been hey, like, still love Willie Fritz, still like what he's building here, but it would be a gut punch loss for at least a little bit.
I agree.
AJ Halsey, Jeremiah Wilson, I would say off last year's defense were both gut punch losses. Anthony Holmes as well. I don't know if you had a gut punch loss from the team this year, and you didn't have to replace high volume, which I think says good things about the buy-in of the guys on this roster who brought in into the staff, and also says that, hey, a lot of these guys could potentially develop into difference makers later. Because, hey, Bob, that used to be something that happened. Like, guys would wait 2 or 3 years and develop into starting caliber players in the tail end of their college career. We might have some of those in this roster as well.
Yeah, it's so much fun watching Willie cook right now.
No doubt. Talk about the latest ingredients here. The 2 transfers that have been announced since we last recorded a podcast: receiver Moise Tunkara, who previously played for Florida, and defensive end or outside linebacker, depending on what you want to call him, Ashton Porter, who most recently played for Oregon. Both intriguing guys who come to U of H with multiple years of eligibility and having played high school ball in the greater Houston area previously. Always nice to bring local products back when you can, when the fit makes sense, when the guy's the right level of football player. Bobby, which commit would you like to talk about first?
I'll talk about Porter. He looked okay at Oregon, didn't play a ton. Wasn't seeing the field a ton at Oregon. I think it said he played 7 games, which sounds about right. He redshirted his freshman year. I could have that backwards.
You have it.
I could have that. I have it off a year. My bad. But he wasn't seeing a ton. That's a really good Oregon team. And I would imagine the homecoming getting him the opportunity to fight for a starting spot. And even if he's not going to be a starter here, he's still probably going to have quite a bit of playing time on this team next year.
Yeah, played a few hundred snaps for Oregon this year. Not a starter, not a guy who probably could have competed for a starting spot there in the future, but kind of same principle as the guy we talked about last week, linebacker Jaden Yates from Ole Miss. Mm-hmm. That Ashton Porter was able to get on the field for a team, for a defense as good as Oregon's, even if it was as a rotation guy, has to be exciting. Like, we're not an Oregon level team at this point. No. And I would say a certain college football playoff result tells us there probably weren't any Big 12 football programs in 2025 that were truly on Oregon's level. It's one thing to take a transfer who just could not get on the field in multiple years in a blue blood program, maybe a guy who was a former blue chip recruit, but played 2 seasons, maybe only saw a couple games of just very garbage time kind of action, redshirted that first year. Those guys feel a bit more like a gamble. I'm a little more hesitant there. And I think we saw a few guys who met that description under the previous staff not really work out here. But you have to be a pretty doggone good football player to even get a couple hundred or a few hundred snaps on Oregon's defense. And that Porter will be a big part of next year's Cougar defense. I think should excite Cougar fans. I was already excited about this class before his commitment, but in my opinion, the biggest get the Cougs have gotten on that side of the ball in the transfer portal. Really, really excited for him.
Yeah, super excited to see what he can do. Like you said, just a guy who, if you're being recruited to go to Oregon, you're probably a pretty good football player.
No doubt. I'll talk about Moise Tunkara next. You can't tell a ton based on a freshman season where he wasn't a high volume target. He caught 2 passes in total for the Gators this season, one against LSU and one, I think, in their opener against an FCS opponent. But he played a good amount of snaps. And the fact that he was ready enough for Division I speed, that he was out there 1 year removed from playing high school football for an SEC team, wasn't an especially good one, but he was out there and able to get on the field that quickly has to mean something. not a super scientific thing, but I saw a good number of Florida fans like reacting to his going to Houston. Like, hey, like usually you expect sour grapes there. And the few I saw were just like, yeah, this kid's a future star. Like this kid's a good one. Not a super original observation on my part too, but you could also see the staffs kind of going size at receiver. Tunkara is listed at 6'3". You have Trent Walker from Oregon State in this class at 6'2". Tyson Turner 6'2" from Texas Tech as well. Your favorite, the tight end from UTSA, Patrick Overmeyer at 6'5". Like, I think all your guys are going to be minimum 6 foot next year. And I think clearly a staff philosophy here. And yeah, it's going to be a big receiver group next season. Sorry, you were about to say something.
No. I was going to point that out as well with the size. You're hoping that maybe he didn't see the field a ton. New coaching staff at Florida maybe wants something a little bit different. Hopefully that homecoming really kind of motivates him, and you see a lot of good plays from him this year.
No doubt. So we'll update as new commitments come in, when or if they do. Again, players who entered right at the deadline, who haven't publicly announced that they're in the portal yet, may pop up here and there. But today, this is Tuesday, January 20th, and I think going back a few days, players who have not graduated from their current institution or are not about to graduate cannot enter the transfer portal. So I think the movement other than commitments is going to slow down a fair amount. And at some point in the not too distant future, next few weeks, maybe next month or so, Bobby and I will probably sit down and do a Patreon exclusive episode like we've done previous seasons, breaking down the incoming transfer class. So something to look forward to if you support us there. And if you don't, patreon.com/SH podcast. And as I mentioned at the top, we have a couple more Cougar sports with notable results to talk about. In both cases, notable positive results. And we will lead that off talking Cougar swimming and diving, who was back in action. I believe this is a first-time conference-specific event hosting the Big 12 East Showdown at the campus wellness natatorium. I know TCU, West Virginia, Iowa State, and Cincy were the other teams in this meet. Bobby, tell us about this one.
Yeah, so like you said, it's the Big 12 East Challenge. So you Cincy, TCU, West Virginia, and Iowa State. It does always kind of make me laugh that we are considered East with the additions and stuff that we saw. It's kind of like growing up a Cowboys fan. We were always part of the NFC East, but the Rangers were in the AL West. It was always very confusing for me as a kid. But yeah, Coogs hosted. Coogs actually came out on top. Great to see the team win this event. This is an event, like you said, I couldn't recall us ever doing this one before. I kind of went back and I didn't see it, but usually your first meet, the first event is usually some kind of duel or a big one where it's a bunch of teams that are just, you could tell everyone's kind of not in your conference. They're all just kind of feeling things out. You actually get to see where you stand against some conference mates. Now, I will also say the West is probably much more of a challenge with their teams, but if you're going to play the weaker of the two, at least win the weaker of the two, right? It's like when you play a bye game in basketball, or you play SFA in football. It's like, yeah, you didn't learn a ton, but at least you won it, right? Like, at least you won this one. A couple of standout performances. You had freshman Maisie Wallowsign. I think I said that right. I couldn't find a pronunciation guide anywhere, so I was kind of.
I think I know the name you're talking about. I feel like that's a good faith effort, even if it's not right.
She got her first collegiate win on the 1 meter springboard, which is always good to see freshmen winning events, Big 12 events at that. Granted, it wasn't the West one or anything like that, so put that kind of caveat in here, but still. Don't want to crap on a first collegiate win. That's always exciting. You get it as a freshman. You'll love to see that. You also had event wins by Intraken in the 200 individual medley. Groupile. I think I said that right.
I think it's Goupil, but I also would not swear by that either. So
won the 100-yard freestyle. Nethercutt won the 200 butterfly. Then we had some wins in the 1650 free from another freshman, Emma Overall, and then you had Duncan wins the 200 backstroke, And then McLeod wins the platform. So you had a lot of first place finishes there. You won this meet. A great way to kind of start the season off, Sam.
Yeah, a lot of event winners there. My big takeaway also is that U of H has, it looks like, some depth in some key events. Obviously, it's nice, it's vital for the team's ability to finish as high as possible at conference championships that you are good in a variety of different events, and you can get a good points haul from as many different events as possible. But having the specific depth like you have in diving, you mentioned multiple divers there doing well in their events. Michelle McLeod at this point has, I believe, an NCAA level performance in all three diving disciplines, the 1 meter, the 3 meter, and the platform, which, yeah, that'll play. But you also
that
have
works.
Jimenez, Duncan, and Torres going 1, 2, 3 in the 100 backstroke. That's really exciting as well. I think it's good to see the Cougs be the top performing team. Like you said, a couple years of Big 12 championships would tell us that U of H should finish ahead of those teams. But I would say, if you're going for the cross sport comparison, I would say not unlike like what you've done to West Virginia and ASU in men's basketball, like a little bit better than the lower level programs, but somebody where Cougar Swim and Dive is right now that you should be expecting to finish ahead of. Still won't take it for granted, though. This program, one of the athletic department's most consistently good ones, even in the previous conference, has now gone into the Big 12 and been among the better ones in the sport as well, really not skipping a beat. I mean, Tanika Jameson and her staff continue to do some of the best work. I was about to say some of the best work on Colon Boulevard, Bobby, the way we kind of use Colon Boulevard as a placeholder, referring to U of H athletics broadly, but maybe given where the natatorium and the rec center are, maybe more accurate to say the work Tanika Jameson and her staff are doing along Spur 5.
Spur 5, yeah.
Accurate.
Spur 5 and MLK, the work they're doing there.
Yeah, exactly. In the shadow of the subway that I believe is still in that shopping center in the Den. Is that still there?
The Den's there. I don't know if Subway's still there.
But you,
Domino's
I was
used to be there.
You and I have ate many a sandwich as much younger people at that Subway. I mean,
yes,
good swim and dive event. I think good depth from this program. Obviously, like you said, Arizona State, like that's kind of where like a lot of the real firepower at the top end, and those are the teams you were competing amongst with last year in the first conference championship. You had those teams there. Those would be the tougher ones, but you proved for not the first time that you are better than a lot of the programs in the eastern half of the league, and I think should still be around the top 3 or 4 once do the championships here later this year.
Agreed.
And last but not least, we will finish here talking about a team we previewed last week, and that will be our first of the season, Bobby, Houston Cougar Tennis Corner. And this was a really encouraging opening weekend. The Cougs played 3 matches, 2 on Friday that I was there in person for, and 1 on Sunday. Won all 3 by a 4-0 final, meaning the Cougs in all 3 matches won enough points to clinch the team win before their opponent could even get 1 point on the board. And having watched all 3 matches, either digitally or there in person, I don't think any of these opponents would have picked up a point if all matches were finished, even after the Cougs clinched the team win. My expectation going into the weekend was that the Cougs would win all 3 of these, though the Sunday one in LA against Loyola Marymount, I would have expected to be the trickiest. Ended up being a 4-0 win, where the Cougs, I think, were good value for that 4-0 win, if that term there kind of makes sense. I believe there are areas the staff will identify that the team needs to improve in. I think the opening doubles part of the match was a little nervy in all 3, and one of your pairings left the weekend with a losing record. Even acknowledging that, though, I still believe the Cougs are in better shape on the doubles courts now than they were at any point last season, where it was one of your big notable weaknesses. And even acknowledging, like I already have, that these were 3 opponents that this specific U of H team should have expected to beat, how they did it here was notable. I had a few different realistic scenarios after previewing this season for how this past weekend would play out after we previewed it, and this basically lines up with the best case scenario. I mean, some crazy stats from opening weekend. Just on this opening season road trip, Bobby, the Cougs won as many true road matches, 3, as the program did combined the entire 3 previous seasons in full. The last road matches this team won at all were in 2023. So you just played 2 full seasons where this program had never won on the road and just did 3 times. I mean, imagine for a moment you're the 2 seniors in this team, Sophie and Gabby. You've done so many road trips without the joy of winning. And that they both got to be a part of this, and Sophie's case was a big part of all 3 of these wins is really cool. This was also the first time that Houston Cougar tennis has opened the season with 3 straight sweep wins since 1990. The first ever time that this program has opened a season doing that on the road. Pretty cool, man. I'll start with the UCR match. That was the opening one on Friday morning in Riverside. I was able to figure out actually via Google Maps and UCR's website best campus parking lot to see the match, but I still ended up having to cut through their rec center to get in and out of the match, which thankfully they were very cool with, but I felt kind of funny just walking to and from this match past the rock wall and the rec basketball courts and all that jazz. And there were like a decent number of people at the match too. It wasn't like I was the only person there. I would say there were probably, I mean, not a huge crowd, but like 40, 50 people, not including like the team people at this match. So it's kind of funny.
Yeah, just kind of funny. Whenever I have a friend who coaches wheelchair basketball and they play up here at UTA, they play at their like rec center. And so like you have to walk in by like where people scan their IDs to get in, and you're like,
that's exactly what I had to do. I literally had to walk through the little turnstile thing. She just she popped it for me, and I just went. Again, super cool. Like shout out the UCR rec center employees who like understood what I was doing there and understood. I was like, hey, I'm just trying to cut through here, man. I'm not trying to sneak in here and get some free workout. Yeah, get a lift in my jeans and t-shirt here at the UCR rec center. The court layout was basically 2 groups of 3 courts, and the bleachers were on both sets really only especially close to 1 court. And it was still relatively cool in the morning on Friday, but the doubles courts were all in the sun. So I had to find a spot along the fence that I wasn't blocking the bleachers, and found a spot in the fence line where the sun was at least a little bit out of my eyes. And I got to watch Sophie Schouten and Shems Doha Zagluli compete in the opening doubles court 1 match. You could see some rust in this one from 2 or 3 months off playing competitive tennis. At different points, Schouten and Zagluli were down 4-1 and 5-3 before fighting to cut it to 6-6 right before Petya Drame and Lisa Morsova won their match over on court 3 to clinch the doubles point. For the Cougs, Alexia Lavinia Pujac, your 1 freshman, and Valeria Kroatina were the first Cougs off the court in this one. Won their match on court 2, though they did struggle in the 2 matches after this one, at least as a doubles pairing. For singles, I started mostly on court 4, watching Eva Sepa take on UCR's Crystal Kim, just for the unscientific reason of that court had by far the most shady places to stand. It ended up actually being one of the closer single sets of all the tennis that was happening, though Eva did close out a 7-6 tiebreaker to win that set. From there, I went over to court 1, mostly watched your top singles player, Lisa Morsova, who by that point had largely taken over the match, won her opening set 6-3, and this match went final with her pretty far in the lead on her opponent. I couldn't watch the other courts as closely, and they had the kinds of manual scoreboards that only get updated every few games, so I could see that Shems, Valeria, and Sophie were all dominating their matches, and I figured that would get the Cougs to 4-0 pretty quickly, and that's what ended up happening in that order. Shems, Sophie, and Valeria won in straight sets to clinch the Cougar win. We'll just note that freshman Alexia Lavinia Pujac was the only Cougar not leading her match of the uncompleted ones, though I think had a decent chance to win it before the Cougs got the 4-0 win in Riverside. Drove down to Irvine for the second of these Friday doubleheader after getting lunch at the In-N-Out on University Avenue, and only hitting 3 traffic spots between Riverside and Irvine, which I feel like is pretty good by Southern California standards. Got in under an hour, got enough time to eat lunch and very leisurely go over to Irvine, find parking, and find all the various anteater statues that I sent pictures of to you and Dustin in our group chat. And I will say UCI had a much nicer setup than UCR. U of H players, I remember them saying liked the service there a lot more, though it was kind of the same situation where if you were watching and you wanted to sit in the covered bleacher area, you would really only have a good view of the 2 courts closest to the bleachers, though unlike UCR, you could actually walk around the area and at least through the fence, watch the farther courts, which I did a couple times. For doubles, once again, I mostly only watched Sophie and Shems play on court 1, and it was a much cleaner effort than the one that morning in Riverside. They were facing Carolina Fowler, who was a multi-time Big West doubles all-conference specialist, and I believe we're down 3-2 early before closing strong. Won that one 6-3. First Cougar win to go final, though the Cougs did lose on court 2, and I was able to walk over and catch the final couple games of Petya and Lisa play on court 3, which they won 6-2 to clinch the doubles point and put the Cougs up 1-0. For singles, I went over and watched Alexia because I hadn't gotten to see her play yet, and it was one of those courts that was closest to the seating area. She was going against one of UCI's most veteran players, and it was pretty close early, but she did a fantastic job breaking serve late, eventually got ahead for a 7-5 first set win, and looked like she was largely controlling her second set, but that did go unfinished before the Cougs clinched the overall match. The only difference in the singles lineup, because Kat fielded a different singles lineup in each of these 3 matches, was Petya Drame swapped in for Eva Seppa on court 4. I watched for the second set most of Lisa's court 1 match, which she was 1 game away from winning when the overall match was called final after I believe Valeria was the clinching one on court 5. To give you an idea of how much the Cougs dominated this one, Bobby, on the 3 courts that went unfinished, each Cougar player was up at least 3 games in the match. Like Lisa was up 5. She was literally 1 away. She was, I think, 5-2, and I believe was about to serve before they just called like court 5 done.
Yeah.
Just, at that point, you see all the matches get abandoned. The teams kind of meet back up, all that jazz. You could correctly say that this one and UCR were ones that U of H should expect to win, but these 2 matches were so striking to me in how the Cougs dominated. I watched a decent amount of last year's U of H team, and I never saw them turn an opponent, even a few of the outmatched ones they played, into a grease spot the way they did to UCI and UCR on Friday. It was really impressive. We looked for the first time like a Big 12 program.
I love that. I love like going into a place that you kind of expect to win and coming out and actually doing what you showed up to do. And to your point, that's what big programs do, right? So, especially in the way in which you won makes me very happy as I was kind of looking through the results and I was getting the play-by-play from you.
Yeah, just an absolute butt kicking. I was back at home for the 3rd and final match of the weekend. Like I said earlier, by far the trickiest opponent in Loyola Marymount, who the Cougs took on in LA. I believe I mentioned this in the preview, but LMU returned his second team all-conference pick in Anastasia Bosova, and they brought in a pair of intriguing transfers in Lydia Gonzalez, who was an all-SEC double specialist at Kentucky, and Anna Piestrazinska of Arizona State, who played for that program last season. I expected a Cougar win pregame, but I figured the Lions would be able to pick up a point either via doubles, where they would be very tricky, or a singles win. I figured it would be kind of a 4-1, 4-2 Cougar win. And thankfully it didn't happen. The Cougs would take this one 4-0 as well. The doubles courts were a little nervy for the second match in a row. Unfortunately, the Cougs lost pretty decisively on court 2 with Valeria and Alexia, but really gutsy win. The Cougs won 2 different 7-6 tiebreakers to take the doubles point. Most impressively, Sophie and Shems defeated a pairing in Bosova and Piestrazinska, who had just earlier that week beaten a top 50 pair from USC. So very difficult opponents here. And I think that's probably the toughest assignment anyone had, singles or doubles, all weekend. And Sophie and Shems found a way to win the opening match and really give you a valuable point, give you that momentum that, as I've followed college tennis closer, that you see teams get when they get that 1-0 lead. And Sophie and Shems both went out and dominated in the singles court and put the Cougs up 3-0 pretty quickly. You had a bit of a wait between 3-0 and 4-0. Like, the other matches weren't nearly as dominant, though I do believe what I said at the top, that if you played this match out entirely, I think the Cougs could have very well won all 6 singles matches. Sophie and Shems, as I mentioned, dominated on courts 6 and 2 respectively. Neither one of them lost more than 4 games in their match before picking up straight sets wins. As I mentioned, another unique singles lineup. Alexia Lavinia Pujac only played doubles on Sunday. Petya played on court 3 and Eva played on court 4. like I said, a bit early or a bit slower getting to 4 after you went up 3-0 pretty early, but ultimately Petya got you the win on court 3. Got ahead and pretty well dominated her first set. Got a little bit more from her opponent in the second one, but ultimately took her second set 6-4 to give the Cougs a 4-0 match win. Again, I will note of the unfinished matches, Lisa and Valeria were both multiple games up in their unfinished sets, and Eva had just lost a close second set after winning her first. Lisa ended up having all 3 of her matches this weekend, all of which she had commanding leads in, go unfinished because her teammates were slightly quicker, and to be fair, also weren't going against court 1 level opponents as well. We'll say it for the umpteenth time. These were 3 matches the Cougs should have expected to win, but also this was literally not something this program has ever done since going to the Big 12, winning a road match, and ever done in winning 3 straight, not dropping a single point on the road. I believe how much this team is improved over last season is an open question, and hopefully, like any sports team, their best tennis is still to be played as the season goes on, but everything I saw tells me this is a much improved group over last year, which was also a much improved group over the previous season, and has the potential to be the best team this program has had since we started this podcast 11-ish years ago. Like that's how good this team is.
That's exciting, man. It's just another sign of a program just doing, we talk about with like soccer or with basketball, just raise the floor. Really feels like not only is the floor raised here and we can expect to be competitive in a lot of things, and the doormat era ends here as the doormat said, but it really feels like this team could do is going to do that thing that, like I said, soccer and basketball and women's basketball are kind of doing, where they can beat some teams that maybe you don't expect them to beat, but the top tier teams are no longer going to just write this as a, what did they call it on Split Zone Duo? Your voucher, your Houston
Your
voucher.
Houston voucher, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's going to be a Houston voucher anymore when it comes to tennis.
Fully agree. I don't believe this team is going to win every match it steps on the court for, but I believe this team is going to have more expectation to do that than anyone previous to this one. That's why I'm excited to see bear out over the rest of the season. For the week to come, the Cougs will be returning to the Lone Star State for 2 more roadies through your neck of the woods, Bobby, through the DFW Metroplex. The first match will be on Thursday at UT Arlington. Believe moved to a 3 p.m. start on that one. This will be UTA's spring season opener. The Cougs actually got their first win last season at home against the Mavericks. And that team had struggles early fielding enough players, I think just due to injuries, but ended up actually getting 1 win away from winning their conference and punching their ticket to the NCAAs last season. So clearly we're at least a decent team, but nearly their entire roster graduated or in a couple cases transferred out. So if you were there Thursday, Bobby, all of the UTA athletes you were seeing are almost certainly competing for that program for the first time in a spring team match. With all respect to UTA, the match I'm really focused on the week to come is UNT on Friday morning in Denton. A very high likelihood, given the track records and experience, that UNT will be a better opponent. They did lose their top singles player from last season to graduation, but the Mean Green returned Stefani and Formy, who was good enough to play at ITA All-Americans, along with a few other returners from what was a good AAC program, but also one that lost to the Cougs in non-conference last spring, was much better at home. A lot of those athletes were on the court. That's the scary one. You play a team that you beat last year, but go to their house and face a lot of the same athletes. There's a lot of familiarity between these two teams, not just from the match last year, but playing in the usual like Texas fall events as well. If U of H can return to Houston after this week slate 5-0 and maybe not having to sweat too much, that'll be a statement made, in my opinion.
Okay, nice. I'm still deciding which one I'm going to go to, whether it's UTA or UNT. I kind of live between both of those, so I'm debating which one I want to actually go to. I guess I could try to do both, but that's probably not happening. That's a lot of driving.
It is.
And so I just haven't decided which one I'm going to go to, but I'll definitely be out there for one of them.
Heck yeah. All right, that's it. That's all the Cougar sports this week. Bobby, take us home, buddy.
That's all I got, man. Well, that is it for this episode of the Scott and Holman podcast. I want to thank you guys so much for listening. We do appreciate it. Like Sam and I love doing this, but if we were getting, 2 listeners a week, I don't know if we would continue to do it. So we really appreciate you guys. We do this for fun, not to pay our bills. I think it was a couple of months ago. I don't know if you remember this, Sam, but somebody was like, you guys should quit your podcast and go get a real job. And we were like, hey, we're good enough that you think this is our real job.
Yeah,
but in all
exactly.
seriousness, we thank you guys
What
so
do you
much
think
for
podcasters make?
This is not our full-time job, buddy. And most of the full-time podcasters you do listen to also write for like 4 different places. So
Yeah, exactly.
So anyways, that is a complete and total tangent. We do appreciate you guys listening a ton. If you have any feedback for us, we are always open to it. Can't tell you that we will do everything you suggest because we might not, but we will at least listen to your feedback. You can find us on social media at Twitter. You can find us at SH Podcast. You can find us on Blue Sky at podcast.bsky.social. If you want to go full on email here, you can email us at shpodcast@gmail.com. And if you want to throw a couple of bucks behind what Sam and I do, it's not free to host this on various places and to keep everything uploaded and whatnot. So we appreciate anybody who wants to support us in that endeavor. You can throw some money at us on Patreon, patreon.com/SH podcast. We have some premium stuff that we are working on that we will knock out for you. And we hope we make it worth at least $5 a month. If you want to throw more money at us, Sam and I would not say no to it. If you are a multinational corporation and you are looking to name a podcast after yourself that talks about University of Houston sports, we're open to it. But with all that being said, Sam, I think we covered all the Cougs. I think we covered how we're doing personally. What do we always say here, bud?
Go Coogs.
All right. Go Cougs! Let's go!